Hello, everyone, and welcome. Every now and again, you run into someone whose life story sounds less like a biography and more like a beautifully written, unpredictable screenplay. Today's guest is exactly that person. Matt Croke started his career in the center ring as a professional clown with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. He then headed back to Chicago to master the art of quick-witted comedy at Second City, spending nearly 2 decades on stage. But as we all know, life has a way of throwing premises that we never rehearsed for. Please welcome to the show, Matt Croke. Matt, thank you for being here.
Rochelle, thanks for having me. This is going to be a blast.
Absolutely. Matt, as long as I've known you, you've never been lost for words. So I know for sure, and
Oh
I've
boy.
heard your story. I know
Oh boy.
you. I know that this will be something that will capture the hearts of many. So I'm happy you're here. I'm so
Let's do
glad
it.
that you're taking the
Let's do
time to
it.
do this with me today. So, to the outside world, clowning and improv may seem like entirely different planets.
Mm.
One is highly physical and nonverbal, and the other is fast and verbal and deeply conversational. How did you move from the circus to the Second City stage? And how does that change your read on an audience and how you connect with people?
That's such a great question because I think clowning is one of those ones that you automatically think of birthday clowning. Like it has such a an incorrect stigma that if it's done really well, the art of clowning. I know this sounds pretentious, but it's a deep dive into clowning. But the art of clowning is really something that needs to be taught and studied. And one of the things to kind of answer that question is that clowning is not a mask. So it's actually an extension of yourself. Hence the kind of the bigger makeup, the louder clothes, the more exaggerated situations. So I think learning to be a clown and learning improv, the big through line is don't be funny, be true to yourself. And I remember in both cases, I remember in Second City, I was on doing a bit in front of a teacher, and the teacher in front of the whole class says, "Croak, stop trying to be funny. It's painful." I was like, oh my God. I was like, but what he's saying was, and it really did help, is where are you in the moment? Stop going for the bit. The comedy will come. The humorous situations will come. So the transition was in clowning to performing to what I do now to how I raise my kids is how do you find your inner self and make that shine and make that come through. It's about being in the moment and what improv does and what clowning does, because although it's physical now, I did speak in clowning. There are many clowns who didn't choose to speak. I always spoke in the circus, because that was more natural. I was kind of more of a verbal guy anyway. So my favorite part, like if you put me in front of 20 kids, I wouldn't know what to do. I don't know how to make a balloon animal. I don't know how to do any of that. So my skill was writing gags and interacting with the audience. So in the circus, I'd run into the crowds and I'd mess with the parents and of course the kids and do all that and cause chaos. Right? That's kind of what my clowning character was a bit of a chaos generator. I would grab popcorn from a woman and I'd throw it at the largest man I could find, and then I would duck and watch the guy turn over, and she's trying to point down, and there's almost a fight, and I jump up and hey, how you doing? Take people's tickets and walk them halfway around the arena and say, oh no, your seat's the other way, and then just leave. So just kind of an agent in chaos. But just being in the moment and being true to the situation was really the transition. And clowning allowed me to do that because Ringling Brothers, to audition for Clown College, 3,000 people auditioned, only 50 got into Clown College. Out of the 50, only 18 got a contract with the circus, and I was one of the 18. And I saw so many way more talented clowns than I not get contracts because they didn't have down the idea of clowning. They're very talented, could juggle, it was fire. I mean, the juggling was insane, could backflips, front flips, do all that, but they didn't have down the essence of it. And so I realized, oh, I just kind of need to be me and just build on those listening skills. Um, which now that I'm in client relations, which we'll get to in an autism center, when you talk about soft skills, when you talk about empathy, when you talk about perspective taking, it's also about listening. I think the stat I saw is a good conversation is 70% listening, 30% talking. So that skill did really set me up for improv.
Phenomenal. I love your backstory and even the fact that out of everyone, and you said there were more people that were more talented in your words than you. However, you were the one that made it through. You had that something special and you really understood the concept. And the fact that you're able to connect with people in a way that most people would be scared to put themselves out there like that and really kind of just be funny and silly and enjoy the moment. You're creating memorable moments for people. I can't imagine the joy and the reward that you felt doing that. Like it just seems like the most fulfilling life experience. I'm so glad you took that leap and did it. Just put yourself out there to try something that is a great conversation starter.
Actually, I have to give credit to my mom because I was a senior at Notre Dame High School in Niles, Illinois, born and raised in Niles, near O'Hare Airport. And in high school, we didn't really have. We're a small Catholic boys' school. We didn't. Theater wasn't our, strength, if you will. But I always kind of liked performing, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I'm a senior in high school. My mom comes home and she's like, Matt, I heard on WGN radio that Ringling Brothers is having clown college auditions. Now, I'm the youngest of five. So this is a true story. I told my mom, I said, you know what, Mom, good for you. You should do that. I'm about to graduate high school. You should join the circus. Like, you should probably tell Dad before you tell me. And she said, she looked at me, she says, not for me, for you. And I'm like, for me? I said, oh, a hard pass on that. I'm not, clowns are weird. I'm not going to be a clown. And she's like, oh, yeah, it's this program in Florida for 10 and a half weeks. And I go, 10 and a half weeks in Florida? Maybe clowns aren't that weird. Maybe they're not that strange. So my parents both took me to the audition, which was at DePaul University. And I walk in, and this kind of goes to the mindset. I walk in to the audition, and there are people filled in clown makeup, costume head to toe, juggling in the corner, doing mime in the background. And I said to my parents, I'm like, get me out of here. Like, and my mom was like, oh no, this looks like fun. I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
okay, I'm here for you. Let's just be clear. I will play your little game of humiliating myself, but I'm here for you. So I sat there, know nothing of clowning. I saw the Bozo show growing up, right? I was born in '69, so I'm the Bozo kid. Nothing of it. So I'm sitting there, and the director of Clown College shows us this physical bit he wants us to do, and he said, "Do what I just did. Don't try to make it funny. Don't try to add to it. I just want to see your movement." And so I'm sitting there going, all right, whatever. So he sits down, and I'm glad I didn't go first because people got up there and they started changing it. They tried to make it funny. They were making improvements. And I looked at the director of Clown College, and he's just shaking his head. And I go, I get it. I don't need to be funny. I just need to follow directions, right? They want to mold their clowns. They want to say, are you teachable? Can you listen to directions? Can you follow rules? And so I got up there and I did my movement and I followed the rules. And that was, I think, a huge part of me being selected. And following the rules didn't mean I was bland. It didn't mean I didn't push the envelope. What it meant is that in improv, in clowning, in anything, in communication, there are rules to follow. There are strategies to follow. And if you follow those, you will have success and you will be funny when the comedy comes. And the biggest rule, which is the name of my book, I know it's an improv term, but it worked for me, is yes and. Yes, I accept the premise and I can make it better, right? That ended up being a philosophy for me. My wife passed away 5 months after my third daughter was born back in 2008. So I was a single father raising 3 daughters. So that yes and was, I don't, talk about words mattering, that was I don't like that it happened, but I accept that it happened. I'm not going to get stuck. And what can I do next? So that rule from clowning to improv to whatever, that allowed me to succeed at every level I was at. because I understood the rules, or I understood the building blocks of not, it's not just up there and you just say anything and you get laughs, or a scene goes well or you connect with somebody. You have to tell a story.
Yeah. Well, you kind of stole a couple of my questions here. So, I mean, I appreciate you because you're diving directly into the heart of this discussion today. You were handed a premise no one would ever want to accept, and you consciously took that theatrical rule and applied it to the heavy, messy reality of grief. When you ended up sharing this raw journey with the world in your memoir entitled Yes and, what was the most challenging and perhaps the most therapeutic part of putting such a personal survival story into words?
I think the most challenging was that I didn't want it to seem like it was a poor me story, and I didn't want it to seem like people were reading it going, "Oh, this is really just therapy for him." The biggest challenge was, how do I take something personal? How do I take something so painful, and how do I turn it into a story that I'm not telling people, you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? As a matter of fact, my book literally ends with, take this for what you will. Take any of this for what you will. There are some things that happened in that story that I don't know. I talk about one where she's in. Let me give you a little more background. My 2008 was in March, my third daughter was born. In April, a month later, my mother in law, Lisa's mom, passed away from cancer. And then in July, Lisa passed away from cancer. We were
Wow.
living with Lisa's mother when she was going through her cancer. So, two
Wow.
women, both under the same roof, passing from cancer the same year while a baby was on the way, right? So, there was a scene in the book where her mom has since passed and Lisa's close to hospice, and I walk in and she's smiling and she's looking behind her, and I'm like, "Oh, you're smiling, what's going on here?" And she says, "Is she still here?" And I'm like, is who still here? The nurse? She said, "My mom, she's back there. Can you tell her to go away?" I'm like, "Nope, not going to tell her to go away. If someone has traveled from another dimension to be here with us, I'm not going to tell her to go away." So I witnessed that. I saw that. Lisa believed it. Now, whatever happened, I don't know. Who knows? But that's what I lived through. And I bring that example up because I try to write the book from that perspective.
Yeah.
Here's what happened. You interpret it any way you want. You take out of it anything you want. You, whatever. This is what happened. This is
Right.
how I dealt with two women in the same house, both passing away while a baby is trying to be born and was ultimately born. And Miss Molly just graduated high school. She's going to
Oh,
Madison, Wisconsin for college. She's neurotypical. Everything's great. Um, that was the biggest challenge. Is when I wrote my memoir, I went to Amazon and I found people who read memoirs. There's a way to look at readers' profile. And I contacted them and I said, "Hey, you love memoirs. Can I give you one to read? Because I want you to read this and give me honest feedback. You don't know
yeah.
who I am. You have no idea what I look like. You have no idea what I sound like. And that's exactly what I'm looking for."
Yeah.
Contacted 20. I think five said yes. Um, and each one of the five said, "No, this is good. No, this is good. We don't know you. We get it. We get it. This isn't you got to know him to get it, which is what I didn't want. I didn't want, well, if you know Matt Croke, this makes sense. If you don't know him, it's like, so I think that was the biggest challenge.
Thank you for sharing that vulnerable story of what you went through in your experience. And I definitely believe that it's something that's not just for people who are currently dealing with grief and would need to hear those words and understand that experience, but for people who just learning empathy. I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
great way to understand and have compassion for a natural human experience. This is an experience that none of us are immune from. And your commitment to staying open to life's next line led to some beautiful things. You met Cheryl, who
Mm-hmm.
also had a spouse that she lost to cancer. And together you decided to make a Brady brunch
We
of your
did. We
family.
did. We
When
did.
you went from being a father of three to raising six daughters under one roof, what was that transition like? And how did your improv background help you manage the beautiful chaos of a household of six girls?
Well, I figured, you're raising three. How difficult could three more be?
It
What's
makes a difference.
six? What's nine? What's 12? And we had an au pair, so there's 8 women in the house.
Yeah.
The girls knew each other first. They met through a program at Lutheran General Hospital, and so they knew each other first before Cheryl and I met. So they were kind of friends, and blending a family was more challenging than I realized, and I thought I was going to be pretty open to it. The biggest mistake, and I've talked to the girls about this. I talked to Alyssa about this, who is Cheryl's oldest. I didn't give Cheryl's oldest enough grace to say, not only do you now have a new dad, but you now are no longer the oldest sibling. Haley is now the oldest sibling, which is my daughter. And I think when her dad passed away, Alyssa, let me explain my two girls. Haley, and again, I said this to them. Haley is someone in the morning, and she'd open up the cabinet for a cereal bowl, and the bowls are all dirty. She'd go back to bed, and if Alyssa opened up it and they're all dirty, she'd go outside and make one out of wood. Like Alyssa's just one of these. You want her on the island. When you're stranded. And so when her dad passed, she was very much that I need to take over. I need to do this. And I think I came in too quick saying, okay, this is the new structure without allowing that time to breathe. I don't think there was some friction between her and Haley for a little bit. And what helped me adjust quicker, because at this point they get along better than they ever have, was that perspective taking, right? Get out of my perception, what I see, what I view, what I feel. What are they, going through? What possibly are they thinking? What are their stressors? What could they be? And even if I didn't know the answers, I could know that it was there. So I had to be less loud. I didn't think I was that loud. I hear literally neighbors I hear yelling at their sons, and I'm like, oh, what's that like? what's it like to have boys? And I'm like this, and they're like, stop yelling. I'm like, that's not yelling. Um, I love raising girls. I love all the girls. Um, but they had to all feel important, and they all had to feel a place. And I remember we all had dinner, and we always tried to do everything together so nobody felt left out. And Kelly didn't want to eat her mashed potatoes, and she was trying to eat them. She almost threw up, and I said, you know what? Fine. Kelly doesn't eat mashed potatoes. Well, total chaos. I don't want to eat mashed potatoes. I don't want to eat. We can create different rules for different kids.
Yes.
And when you say that's unfair, I said, no, it's fair because at some point you'll get a different rule. And that's when we all stopped taking them to the same movies because
Hmm.
some of them didn't like movies. And celebrating each one of them and not blanket everything was the biggest aha moment that I think changed things. Because instead of saying, we're now a new family, we're going to treat everyone equally, I wasn't tapping into their strengths and I wasn't recognizing their weaknesses because I blanketed them all, and one's autistic. So really, I mean, it really didn't work. Once we started, how come? And I'm like, no, we can do this. And throughout the years, that has now benefited because, you know, high tide rises all ships.
Yes.
And each one of them can now celebrate, and they're each doing. My oldest is out in LA. She works for CAA, Creative Artist Agency. She's in the morale department. Alyssa is in the UK getting her master's. So we can all kind of celebrate each one's achievements. And I know they talk to one another. So that was probably my biggest. How did I do it? It was that.
Well, you told me you didn't know what questions I was going to ask you, but I think somehow you had a peep. As a dad outnumbered by seven women, what has been the most surprising or rewarding lessons that have collectively taught you about life and patience?
It's grounding. it's um, it's not easy. Um, you know, being a woman in today's age or in any age, and just listening. Just a lot of listening. It keeps me not only grounded but in tune to what's going on, um, and it's just really rewarding because they are deep thinkers, or they can have deeper conversations. Um, I think just listening to them just kind of keeps me grounded on what's going on today. And I do connect with the younger generation. I work with younger individuals. Their music tastes are very eclectic. You know, I was all caught up on the Kendrick Lamar Drake rap battle by one of my daughters. Yeah, she was like Team Lamar, and she had the best line. She's like, I said, Kelly, who's winning this? She's like, who's winning it? We're winning it because we're getting all these new tracks. We're the winners. So it just kind of keeps me more in tune to everything that's going on. I think that's kind of just the biggest blessing. I think it's just listening and hearing how they're viewing the world and how they're navigating the world, and just being along for that ride. And then when they reach out for help, I jump in with my perspective.
Yeah.
You know, they tend to listen.
You're an amazing father. And right around the same time your family was evolving, your professional life took a profound turn. 8 months after Lisa passed, a high school friend opened up an autism center and you jumped on board. This October, you're celebrating your 17th year with that company, now known as By Your Side Autism Therapy Services. So, looking back in 2009, how did stepping into a mission driven space to help other families heal and grow play a role in your own healing process?
It's very similar to blending a family. Um, as where you may think it's something, you may have your idea. It's like improv. You may think you know what's going into it, but if you're not in the moment, you're not going to understand it. There were only 5 employees, and my friend from high school knew that I couldn't travel anymore. Right? I joined the circus when I was 18, and then I was with a theater company for 17 years. I was on the road 9 months out of the year. I missed my daughter's birth, Haley's birth. I was gone. So not only did I lose that my wife, which is the most important, but I lost my career. Right? I couldn't travel anymore.
Mm.
Um, and so I had a buddy just say, "Hey, I'm opening up this autism center in Darien, Illinois. It's about 40 minutes from your house. Could be 5 weeks, could be 5 months." I told him he lied because it's been over 15 years. And we were just building furniture. And we just had 5 of us. We were doing ABA, speech OT, and we had one center. And just kind of putting it together. I was at the front desk. I did billing. I did all this stuff. And then we kept growing, centers and people. We're now at, I think, 13 centers, over 600 employees. But I ran the billing department for about 7 years. And I know nothing of billing, which is hysterical, but that's that yes and. I just kept saying, okay, following it. But we got to a point where we were getting big enough where Brad, the owner, said, "You know what, we need a client relations person, and you're really great with that. With everything you've been through, you understand grief, although I don't really talk about it, but there's that underlying, when a parent gets that diagnosis, they lose, what they thought their future might have been. Like, it can change. They don't lose it, but it changes." And so they said, "We want you in this client relations role." And I thought, oh, this would be great. I'll go on picnics. I'll meet people at coffee shops. I'll run events. We'll be jumping houses. This will be so much fun that I get to be the guy that just makes parents feel great. And so I took the job, or I switched, roles at where I'm at, and it turned into immediately Matt, angry parent line 1, Matt, angry parent line 2, parent coming in line 3, because the stakes were high. They're choosing By Your Side to do 30 to 40 hours of ABA therapy. The stakes could not be higher,
Yeah.
right? And so when there's an issue, a communication issue, those stakes are even higher. And I remember thinking, boy, this job is really stressful. And I remember thinking, I don't know if I like this job. I think I want to go back to billing insurance, that portion. And the more I talked to parents, the more I started hearing patterns. And so I started writing things down. And I started picking up patterns. And then I said, I think I have things I could tell other therapists on
Yeah.
how to connect with parents. So I made that choice, and I talk about this in my presentation as a therapist. I made that choice saying, I'm no longer taking this personally. I actually want an angry phone call because that's more data. An example I use is some dad was really upset about the scheduling. And so he called me, and there was some swearing, which I don't normally put up with, but he was very upset. And at the end of the phone call, he said, Matt, I'm the dad. It's my job to fix his autism, and I don't know how to fix it. And I went, ah, there it is. There's like four things to break down. A, you're the dad, it's your job. Fix his autism,
Fixing autism.
right? There were so many pressures he was putting on himself. And it didn't mean I had to be his therapist. It didn't mean I had to solve it. But I went,
You
this
know how to
isn't about
support them.
scheduling.
Yes.
Yes, this isn't about scheduling. This is about his anxieties,
Yeah.
his worries. So I was able to take those lessons and talk to therapists and say, perspective taking.
Mm-hmm.
Don't underestimate how much a parent is probably insecure, and they're not going to walk in and say, I don't know what I'm doing. They're going to
No.
walk in and say, why is this? Why is that? And that's where we can come in and say, you know what? Just want to let you know you're crushing it today. Or, hey, you're the parent your child needs. Like those soft skills on saying, this is what you can do. And then it changed my whole job. I then started doing a newsletter with quotes and terms and a way to connect to families. I'm working on an app where they can talk to one another and connect. So it took a long time for me to get the gig, to understand the job, you know. And it came with a simple choice of, like I did when Lisa passed away. I could either go, oh, I do not like calling and having difficult conversations. This is really stressful. To, you know what? I'm going to help. And I'm going to be the person that has honest conversation with parents because someone needs to do it. And I'm
Yes.
going to do it. And I'm planting seeds.
And
And
training
they
others. I
and
love
training
it.
others. Yes, and training others. So now I regularly do an hour to 2 hour presentations monthly to either the occupational therapy or the speech therapy group or the BCBAs or the RPTs or the leaders. I'm constantly doing that. And I always have examples. I always have examples because it happens every day. Um, it took a while for me to kind of figure that out, and I'm still evolving. I'm still trying to figure it out,
Well, you weren't
Rochelle.
handed a manual, but you're creating one each day with the data you're collecting and with each new story you have and presentation you share. You're creating a manual for
Mm.
others. So, to wrap things up, Matt, if you could give one piece of yes and advice to a parent or family member that's currently going through a major, stressful, and unexpected life transition right now, what would it be?
It's going to be with the yes and, but I'm going to be specific about it. The part of yes and is the more you try to control it and the more you try to say this is where it's going to go, the harder that journey's going to be. The more you stay curious and you go, okay, that happened. Okay, what's next? What do I do about it? And that moment for me, even though I knew the yes and, was I was in a therapy group with other widows and there were doctors there. And I had like 10 questions. Like, hey, I'm sleeping too much. I'm eating too much sugar. Like I had all these questions of how I am now. And one of the widows, who husband passed about 3 years ago, started grilling the doctor, saying, why was my husband allowed to go home with his blood clots? Why did this happen? And the doctor is like very empathetic, right? We weren't there. We don't know any of those questions. And she kind of kept going on it. And it was uncomfortable in the whole room because they're like, come on, the doctors aren't here for that. And I just remember thinking, I'm not strong enough to be that stuck. Like, I feel for this person, but I can't be 3 years ago. Why? I have to be, okay, now what? Not
Yeah.
why, what's next? What's next? What journey awaits next?
Yes.
That'd be my biggest yes and when you do the yes and, what's next? What are we gonna do about it? Are you
So,
gonna do
yes,
nothing?
and what's next?
What's that?
What's next? Accepting the premise, finding beauty, and moving forward. Matt Croke, thank you so much for sharing your story, your humor, and your heart with us today. How can our listeners connect with you and find your book, find you, find more about what you offer to the world?
The book is Yes and by Matthew Croke. You can get it on Amazon, Kindle as well. I don't necessarily have a platform, so I am part of Windy City Professional Speakers and Elmhurst University. We're also online. So if any of you are looking to find your voice or refine your voice or tell your story, I can help with that.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening here today. This is the words we needed, and we'll see you again next week.